Hello everyone. It is a gray and rainy day in the Bay Area, so a perfect time to stay inside and try to be productive. I hope you are all staying safe and healthy throughout this pandemic. I know a lot of people are moving to online learning, and that can be a fabulous thing, but it also has its drawbacks. So what I'd like to do is make some video tutorials, and if you're a student in one of my classes, this will hopefully help you out a little bit. I know we're kind of all improvising here, but so for today's video, I would like to talk about the Neapolitan 6 chord. So if you're a student in my course and you're tuning in, if you're in my 202L class, this will help you for your upcoming exam. If you're in my 102 class and you want to learn something and get ahead, you're more than welcome to, obviously tune in too, and ask questions if you have them. So the Neapolitan 6 chord is a predominant chord. You can think of it as a borrowed 2 chord from the minor key with a lowered root. Or you can also think of it as the Phrygian 2, because the Phrygian mode, if you were to solo over the Neapolitan 6, you could use Phrygian as a way to do that. So as a reminder, Phrygian is the 3rd mode, so you start on scale degree 3, if you want to think about it that way, deriving from the major scale. So in the key of C, the Phrygian mode would start on your E natural. So you would have E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. So it's a pretty scale. You can also think of it as if E was the tonic of a new scale, and you were thinking about it in terms of how does this relate to the major scale. Phrygian would be 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. And so it's a really nice scale that actually perfectly outlines the Neapolitan 6 chord. So how do we spell it? Well, the Neapolitan 6 chord is essentially a major triad built off of lowered scale degree 2. So in the key of C, the diatonic 2nd scale degree is D. To derive the Neapolitan 6 chord, what you're going to do is you're going to start on that D flat and construct a major triad. So it's going to be D flat, F natural, A flat. Okay, and how you would notate that if you are doing your music theory homework or taking an exam, you can either write a flat symbol and then capital Roman numerals for 2, or you can just write the capital letter N and then 6. So let's talk a little bit about how it's used and why the inversion is so important. So as I said earlier, it's a predominant chord. So what that means is you're going to treat it like any other predominant chord that you've already learned in your music theory. You can treat it just like another 2. It's always going to go to a dominant functionality. Like I said, it's a predominant, so it's going to want to go to the dominant, which is going to be your 5 chord or your 1-6-4. You're almost always going to see it in first inversion. So as I mentioned in C major, it would be a D flat major triad, D flat, F, A flat. So if it's in first inversion, your bass note is almost always going to be that F. And as it just so happens, that is your scale degree 4. It is the only note in the Neapolitan 6 chord that is already diatonic The other two are chromatic pitches. So you're going to see that scale degree 4 in the bass, and then usually your flat 2 in the soprano or alto, and I'll touch on that again in just a second. But what that does is it eliminates the awkward tritone leap that you would otherwise have from the N6 chord to your 5 chord. So if I'm in the key of C and I write my Neapolitan chord out in a progression, functioning as a predominant, and it's going to 5, I'm going to have D flat in the bass, and then that's going to be going to 5, which is G in the key of C, which happens to be a tritone away. So that tritone leap in the bass is really awkward to hear, even when you have harmonies above it. So in general, you'll find the Neapolitan chord in that inversion for that reason. It also helps you eliminate parallel fifths and octaves. If you're composing, that voicing is much, much more smooth, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So if you've got the chord in first inversion, which most of the time that's how you're going to encounter the Neapolitan 6 chord, if you're writing a 4-part texture or harmony, you're going to have to double one of the pitches, because the Neapolitan 6 chord is just 3 pitches. So what you're going to do is you're going to double the bass, which is going to be that F natural. You might encounter the Neapolitan chord not in first inversion, but for the purposes of your theory courses, I would not imagine you would see it in something other than first inversion. But some composers I've seen it in root position, and when you compose your own music, you get to make your own rules. So there's that. But also, as I mentioned, that F natural, that third of the Neapolitan 6 chord, is the only pitch in that chord that is also diatonic to the key that you're in. And so for that reason as well, you wanted to double that pitch. Voice leading is going to be just the same as any other predominant chord, any other 2 chord. In general, you want your sevenths to resolve down and your leading tones to resolve up. Now, the Neapolitan 6 chord doesn't have a 7th, so you don't have to worry about that. And I'll talk a little bit about the voice leading in just a second. Well, I guess we can kind of go into it right now. So you want to place the lowered scale degree 2 in the soprano and alto, soprano or alto, excuse me. And this is because the weird voice leading thing about your Neapolitan 6 chord is, since you've got that D flat, F, A flat, you're going to a 5 chord, which is G major, which is G, B, D. So now is not the time to think enharmonically, because what a lot of people would be inclined to do is take that D flat, resolve it up to the D, which is the 5 in your 5 chord. But you don't do that. Instead, what happens is you put that lowered scale degree 2 in the soprano or alto, or one of the higher voices if you can, and that is going to go down to your leading tone. So the D flat of my N6 in C is going to go down to my B natural, which is the third of my 5 chord, and the leading tone in the major scale. So that voice is almost always going to go from flat 2, 7, and then resolve to 1. Let's see. So even though the 5 chord contains scale degree 2, which I mentioned, that D natural, your flat 2 does not resolve the step up. And to further kind of drive this point home, when you're writing chromatic pitches, you have a choice whenever you write them. So in the key of C major, I'm writing D flat because it resolves down. I could notate that same pitch as C natural, or excuse me, C sharp. And if I did that in the context of a different chord, the sharp indicates that that pitch wants to resolve up. So when you're writing and encountering music, a lot of times you will see that chromatic pitches are written for a reason, and it almost always will give you a clue as to where that pitch wants to go. So like I said, this chord is approached by the same as any other 2 chord, right? So you can approach from, in terms of your bass movement, up a 4th, which would be approaching from the 6th chord, down a 3rd, approaching from the 4 chord, a step up, or half step up in this case, from your tonic chord. But you will never in your music theory classes have a dominant chord before your subdominant or your predominant. So you're not going to have a 5 chord ever before your N6 chord. So you can also tonicize the Neapolitan 6 if you've already studied borrowed chords. In your theory courses, you already know what I'm talking about. It's basically, the 5 of Neapolitan 6, and that's a different video that I'd be more than happy to do. So how does the Neapolitan 6 chord sound? Well, let's think about it for a second here. So it is a major sonority, so it's not going to sound dissonant, perhaps. But in my opinion, it does sound very jarring. And that's because of the root relations. And so if you think about it, it's a half step away from tonic, a tritone away from 5, and that flat 2 resolution that I mentioned earlier is actually a diminished 3rd. It sounds like a whole step, because it is, but it's also a diminished 3rd because you're going from D flat to B natural. And so for that reason, you notate it that way. So it's not necessarily the quality of the chord that is striking, it's the relationship to everything else in the key center that you're in. So let's have a listen. So I'm going to play for you an example, a 5 chord example. We're going to be in A minor. N6 chords are more prevalent in minor keys, just because I mentioned earlier that you can think of the Neapolitan 6 chord as the diminished or half diminished 2 from the minor chord. We're not worrying about the 7th at all. It's just the triad, remember. And you can lower it a half step. So in the key of C minor, oh, excuse me. The 2 chord, if I just spell it out, is going to be D natural, F, but remember in a minor key, you have flat 6 and flat 7 to deal with. So that A flat up top is diatonic. And so if you take that 2 chord, D, F, A flat, and you lower the root a half step, D flat, F, A flat, you get your Neapolitan 6 chord. So it sounds less surprising in a minor key, but it still has a very distinct sound. So let's take a listen. I'm going to play, we're going to switch to A minor just because I've got the music in front of me. And if you're in my class, It's just going to be the first example on page 37, if you care to follow along. I might do a follow-up and play some more of these, but so we're switching to the key of A minor, so I'll just play the scale to get us oriented. Turn up my volume a little bit. Okay, and I am playing on a piano, so my sound quality is not as good as it could be, but we will press on anyway. So, like I said, 5 chords. I'll play it for you, and then we'll talk through it so you can kind of get the sound in your ear. So here's your first chord. We're starting on tonic. Okay, so I bet you probably could hear which chord was the Neapolitan 6. So I started on 1, minor 1. So remember, I can approach the Neapolitan 6 just like I would any other 2 chord. In this case, we're going to the 6th chord, and we're using the flat 6. So in A minor, that's going to be F major. Then it gets fun. So the bass goes down from F natural to D, which is the 3rd of the Neapolitan 6 in the key of A minor, and we're going to a B flat chord. So D. In my right hand, I'm keeping the F where it is. The A is going up to D, or excuse me, up to B flat, and the C is going up to D. Okay, and remember the Neapolitan 6 chord always goes to a dominant function. So we're going to 5. So bass goes up a whole step, D to E natural, and then in my right hand we go from D to B. Remember that and then from B flat, flat 2 to G sharp. So there's our diminished 3rd. There's our flat 2 going to your leading tone, 7. And then we just add the E. You could also go down to D natural in the tenor and make it a 5/7. And then resolving back up to 1. Leading tone goes up. And let's see, that D goes to C. All right, so I'll play it again so we can kind of get it in our ear. I know I talked a lot over that, but remember in the key of A minor, our Neapolitan 6 chord is going to be B flat major. And for it to be in first inversion, you know, we're going to spell it out. B flat, D natural, F natural. So for first inversion, like it was in the progression, and I'll play it for you again, it's going to be D, F, B flat. And again, that flat 2, that B flat, is going to go to G sharp when we hit the 5 chord, your 7. Your raised leading tone, I should say, because it's not 7 in the chord. So here it is one more time. So I don't have a pedal, I'm reaching for one automatically. We go from 1, flat 6, Neapolitan 6, 5, back to 1. So let me talk you through what's going on in my right hand as we go through this one more time. So I'll start with 1 in root position. In my right hand, I've got 5, so E natural, tonic, A natural, and 3, your minor 3rd up in the soprano. Okay? To get to flat 6, bass goes down a minor third, or excuse me, a major third, to 6. In my right hand, the E natural just goes up a half step. I still keep tonic in minor third in the alto and soprano voices. Bass goes down a minor third this time, from F to D natural. In my right hand, that F natural in the tenor stays. That tonic, that A, goes up to B flat. And that minor third, C, goes up to D. So we're at the Neapolitan 6 chord. In first inversion, I've got D in the bass, my F, and I've got my flat 2 in the alto, and then I'm doubling the third, the bass note, that D that's also in the bass is in my soprano now. So I've checked all the boxes. I'm in the right inversion, I've got the flat 2 in the top 2 voices, and I've doubled the right note. So then bass goes up a whole step. That F in my right hand in the tenor can go down to E, or it can go down to D if I want 5/7, because remember we're going to an E major chord, which is the 5 of A minor. That flat 2, that B flat, is going to go down to that G sharp, just like it should. And then that D is going to go down a minor third to your B. And then 5/1, no surprises there. Bass can go up a fourth or down a fifth. In the range that I'm playing it works better to go up a fourth. And then leading tone goes up to A. Scale degree 2 resolves down to A, so they're both on that same A. And then the 7 of my 5 chord, which would be that D, is going to go down to C. So we end on tonic again. All right, now I will not talk over this and play it for you a couple times. So remember, starting at 1, here we go, 5 chords. All right, and one last time just to reiterate, approaching and leaving the Neapolitan 6 chord, we've started out with 1, flat 6, Neapolitan 6, 5/7, 1. All right, I hope this has been helpful. I didn't prepare any examples in a major key, but I can certainly do that if enough people decide that they want to hear me talk about it some more. I think what I'll do is record a video either tonight or tomorrow about the augmented 6 chords, which are also fun and flavorful. So I guess until then, I hope that you continue to stay safe and healthy, and look forward to chatting with y'all again soon. So goodbye from San Fran.